Lesson 11, Judah Alone. And first, let's see what's happening in the rest of the world. In North Syria, Shalmaneser III continues to campaign. In his 8th and 9th regnal years, Shalmaneser was helping Marduk-Zakir-Shumi, king of Babylon, who was facing a rebellion by his brother. The success is shown by the relief of Shalmaneser and Marduk-Zakir-Shumi shaking hands on the facade of the royal throne base in Kala. In his 11th regnal year, he waged war against Carchemish and Aramu. These kingdoms must have stopped their tribute payment. There follows the comment that Hadad Idri of Damascus and Irhuleni of Hamath came to do battle with Shalmaneser. This, of course, was the Battle of Karkar, where the Assyrians were stopped by the coalition. The 14th regnal year was devoted exclusively to confrontation with the Central Coalition. This was probably another stalemate. 4 years later, Sargon records that Irhuleni of Hamath had become subject to the king of Assyria. The following 2 years had no campaigning in the west, but he was busy in the north. It seems he had achieved his purpose in northern Syria. And what are the political developments? Well, Hadad Idri disappears after the battle in 845. A new man, Hazael, son of a nobody, is the ruler in Damascus. The biblical account of Elisha tells of this change. The pedigree of Hazael is not given in the Bible or in the Assyrian sources. When Hadad Idri died, his partner, Irhuleni of Hamath, broke with the alliance and became a vassal of Shalmaneser. Another narrative from the Elisha cycle tells of the prophet instructing Jehu to revolt and stage a coup against King Joram of Israel. King Joram was killed, and also Amaziah, king of Judah. Later, Jezebel was killed by being thrown from an upstairs window. The Tel Dan inscription. In 1992 and 1994, fragments of an Aramaic inscription in archaic script were found at Tel Dan. The text tells us that Joram and Ahaziah were slain. This is an independent witness to their murder. All of the family and friends of Ahab in Israel were killed. The followers of Baal in Israel were murdered by Jehu. Athaliah in Judah ruled as absolute monarch for 6 regnal years. She had killed all the family of Amaziah, her son, except Joash, who was hidden in the temple. In the 7th year of her reign, Athaliah was deposed in a conspiracy initiated by Jehoiada the priest. 7-year-old Joash was anointed and installed as king. A comment about the prophetic legends, and this is quoting Anson Rainey. This dichotomy between miracle stories and political actions characterizes all the narratives of the Elijah-Elisha cycle. Since the role of prophets in making political and military decisions is widespread in the Mediterranean and Near Eastern world, from Assyria to Greece, there is no reason to doubt the Israelite prophets being involved in such affairs as military sieges and campaigns and the overthrow of regimes. Now let's go to the campaign of Sennacherib. There were some revolts. After the death of Sargon in 705 BC, Merodach-Baladan of Babylon came back from his exile and assembled a large contingent in Babylonia and was attacked by Sennacherib. Merodach-Baladan was not apprehended at this time. Then Phoenicia was conquered, followed by Philistia. Ashkelon was secured along with Ekron, whose king did not want to rebel, and he was put in chains and sent to Hezekiah at Jerusalem. Those at Ekron sent for help to Egyptian and Cushite warriors, but sons of the Egyptian kings were captured along with charioteers from Cush. This battle was fought near El-Teki. It was probably at this time that the Siloam Tunnel was dug. The walls of Jerusalem were strengthened, store cities and stalls were built, and reorganization of the tax system took place by Hezekiah. The campaign in 701 by Sennacherib. Sources are from Sennacherib's annals and the Bible. As for Hezekiah the Judean, who did not submit to my yoke, I surrounded 46 of his strong walled cities and the numberless small towns in their surroundings by laying down ramps and applying battering rams, onslaughts by foot troops, tunnels, breaches, and siege ladders. I conquered them. 200,950 people, small and great, male and female, horses, mules, donkeys, camels, oxen, and small cattle without number, I brought out of them, and I counted them as spoil. Now this is indicating that all of the walled cities in Judah, with the exception of Jerusalem, were taken by Sennacherib. Tribute was received from kings of Amurru, Sidon, Arvad, Byblos, Ashdod, Ammon, Moab, and Edom. There also the Beth Dagon, Joppa, Bnei Barak, and Azor, cities belonging to Sidka of Ashkelon, were conquered. Sidka was captured and deported to Assyria. He defeated the Egyptians at El-Teki. This is Tel Es Shalaf, 2 miles north of Jabna, and he took Timnah, which is Tel El Batashi, and Ekron, which is Kirbet El Mukana. He also captured the city of Lachish. The general order of events is given in 2 Kings 18 and 19. He was unable to take Jerusalem because of a plague that wiped out his army. Sennacherib was assassinated by 2 of his sons, who were angry because he skipped over them in naming his successor in 681. There were a number of royal seal impressions that were found in Israel, and their geographical administrative significance is important. This is evidence for a new administrative division of Judean kingdom during Hezekiah's reign. Symbols used are either a four-winged scarab or a double-winged sun disk. Above the central figure is the phrase, "To the King," and below is written one of four place names, Hebron, Soko, Ziph, or MMST. There are several views concerning the significance of these jars. The jars represented a standard measure used in collecting taxes. Four places were royal estates where products were stored in the jars. This represents the administrative centers or store cities for taxes. Now, the date of these seal impressions. At Ramat Rahel, impressions from every type found in the fill below floor level of the fortress. The fortress is probably Beth HaKerem, built by Jehoiakim. At Lachish, there were 310 seal impressions, most from level 3, dated to the campaign of 701. Evidence from Lachish proves that both the four- and two-winged insignia were used until that city was destroyed by Sennacherib. Paleographic evidence, the letters resemble in form those of the Salome inscription. As for the number of seals, the comparison of the seal impressions has demonstrated the surprising fact that all of the many examples discovered so far were stamped from only 21 to 24 seals. The distribution of the seal impressions, their type according to their sites, at Lachish, 310 total, with 265, 85% of the four-winged, and 45 of the double-winged. At Mizpah, which is Tel and Nezbeh, the double-winged was 82%. At Gibeon, the double-winged was 83%. And at Ramat Rahel, the double-winged was 88%. The small number of double-winged impressions found at Lachish can be explained on the assumption that Hezekiah inaugurated the use of four-winged impressions shortly before Sennacherib's invasion. In the geographical distribution, they are discovered only on Judean tells. And what is the purpose? Well, they must represent one aspect. They are to face the impending war with Assyria, and the intention was probably to bring more efficiency to the collection of government taxes in kind. At Soko, there were 3 Shephelah districts, 2, 3, and 4. At Ziph, the Negev and 2 southernmost districts in the Judean hills, districts 1, 5, and 7. At Hebron, there were the 3 central mountain districts, 6, 8, and 9. And then that MMST is Jerusalem. This probably Benjamin and the wilderness. Ginberg suggested that the MMST was simply an abbreviated form of the Hebrew word for government, which is Mam Shalit or Mam Shalah. The conclusion: the royal seal impressions were adopted by Hezekiah a few years before Sennacherib's invasion to facilitate the reorganization of his kingdom's administration around 4 store cities. First, the 4 winged insignia were stamped on the storage jars. But sometime before 701 BC, it was replaced by the double-winged symbol with the frequent addition of the personal seal impression of an official, probably to confirm that he had checked the jar for its size or manufacture. Anson Rainey says, the new district division currently continued in use through the ensuing reigns to the end of the Judean monarchy. The four-winged scarab was a special royal symbol having Egyptian affinities. The double-winged symbol bears resemblance to the royal insignia of Assyria. Now for the last kings of Judah. The nation of Assyria was in decline, and Judea politically stabilized during the reigns of Esarhaddon and Ashurbanipal. Esarhaddon conquered Egypt and put down a revolt led by Tyre and Sidon. He mentions Manasseh, king of Judah. The reign of Ashurbanipal comprised the last days of Assyrian greatness. Egypt broke away, and Psamtik I founded the 25th dynasty. Babylon gained independence under Nabopolassar in 626, and Ashur fell in 614, and Nineveh in 612. Judean resurgence took place under Josiah. The 24 years from the death of Ashurbanipal to the destruction of the last remnants of the Assyrian army at Haran comprised a period of resurgence for Judah. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king. Expansion was closely connected with the disintegration of Assyrian authority. Throwing off the Assyrian yoke had a profound religious effect. Josiah's 8th year, it coincided with the death of Ashurbanipal. The 12th year is the death of Ashur-etil-ilani, the son of Ashurbanipal. Josiah had as his aim the renewal of the Davidic rule over all of Palestine. There is evidence that Josiah annexed the provinces of Samaria and Megiddo to his kingdom and had taken over a certain area in northern Philistia to the detriment of Ekron and Ashdod. In the 18th year, the Book of the Covenant was found in the midst of religious reform with its concomitant centralization of the cult in Jerusalem. The Judean kingdom is possible only because of the vacuum created by the downfall of Assyria, Egypt, and Babylon. In a struggle for supremacy, they sided with Assyrians against the Babylonians. Josiah was killed at Megiddo in 609 when he went to oppose Necho II of Egypt. Now let's talk about the Babylonian supremacy. After Necho returned from his campaign to aid the Assyrians, Jehoahaz was dethroned and Jehoiakim was installed as king. That took place in 609. He had reigned for only 6 months while Necho was away fighting with the Assyrians. In 605, Nebuchadnezzar defeated the Egyptians at Carchemish on the Euphrates, and Jehoiakim became a vassal of Nebuchadnezzar. But in 601, Jehoiakim rebelled. He was attacked by forces from Edom, Moab, and Ammon. In 598 and 597, there was a campaign of reprisal against Judah. Jehoiakim had died, and some think perhaps he was assassinated, and Jehoiakim, his son, was deported to Babylon. Then we have the reign of Zedekiah. By 589, the anti-Babylonian party in Jerusalem prevailed upon the king to break his oath of fealty to the Babylonian monarch. By this act, Zedekiah sealed the fate of his kingdom and himself. Pharaoh Hophra came to his aid, but his troops were repulsed by superior Babylonian forces. Jeremiah said by the word of Yahweh that Pharaoh would return to his own land and would not be a help to Judah. Finally, Azekah and Lachish were the only two fortified cities not taken by Nebuchadnezzar. In the gatehouse of Stratum II at Lachish, an ostraca was found which read, "And may my Lord be appraised that we are watching out for the fire signals of Lachish, according to all the signs which my Lord has given, because we cannot see Azekah." It is assumed that Azekah had fallen. Finally, the city wall of Jerusalem was breached, and the king and his fighting men tried to escape. He was caught and taken to Nebuchadnezzar at Riblah. There he was sentenced. His sons were killed while he watched, and his eyes were poked out. He was bound with bronze chains and taken to Babylon. Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam and grandson of Shaphan, was appointed to be governor at Mizpah. Johanan, son of Kareah, warned Gedaliah that Ishmael, the son of Nathaniah, was going to kill him. But Gedaliah refused to believe the warning. Then Ishmael came with about a dozen men and killed Gedaliah. Then they went to Jeremiah and wanted to know what was it that God wanted them to do. Whatever he said, they would do that. But when Jeremiah finally came back with a report, it was not to go to Egypt, but it was to stay in Judea. But contrary to their promise, they took everyone that was left to Egypt. And in Egypt, Jeremiah put a stone underneath the entryway or the throne site at one of the Egyptian cities to show that eventually the Babylonian king would set up his throne there and they would be punished.